Hi, I'm Mark, and today I need to talk about some influence Brexit has on the relationship between Britain and, for example, Germany. According to travel providers, Great Britain has become a less popular holiday destination for German and French tourists after Brexit. The fact that EU citizens now need a passport to travel to the UK has proved to be a deterrent, particularly for school groups because of the extra costs and red tape. That's how UK inbound tourism director Josh Croft told The Observer. Because of Brexit, EU citizens have only been able to enter the United Kingdom with a passport only since October 21. According to surveys, however, more than half of Germans do not have a passport at all because they just don't need it. Great Britain left the European Union at the end of January 2020, but transitional periods still applied after that. Hayley Beer-Gamache, which organizes tours through the English county of Oxfordshire, says they have only about half the number of bookings for German and French groups compared to the level before Brexit and the pandemic. And according to The Observer, she said they only had around 155,000 passengers arriving in the country last year compared to 338,000 in 2019. Survey data from the Visit Britain Tourism Association and the Anhalt Ipsos Nation Brand Index Market Research Institute also show the island's declining appeal. While Germans still considered Great Britain the seventh best travel destination in the 2016 survey, the United Kingdom was only ranked number 7 in the same survey in 2022. Many Europeans just have a less positive image of some aspects of Britain now, said David Edwards of travel consultancy Scattered Clouds, and he also told this The Observer. They are a very important market. German in particular, they visit parts of Britain where others don't, such as Devon and Cornwall. But it is questionable whether the tourists who do come, after all, should have a British classic on the menu. For the pub classic fish and chips, British restaurants will again be able to deep fry small regional sharks. The North Atlantic dogfish could be caught again, as the Financial Times reported over the Easter weekend, with a view to a recent change in the British government's fishing regulations. The background is that the population of the species is said to have recovered. Before the fishing ban in 2010, the specialty, often under the name rock salmon, which hardly sounds like a shark, or in combination with fries as rock and chips, was mainly offered in southern England. The change brings some relief for fish and chip shops and pubs. They usually used cod for the British classic, and since the beginning of the Russian war of aggression, they have suffered from high import costs and rising prices for energy, other food and investments, plus the Brexit costs for cod. We looked at all sorts of alternatives, from South African hake to American Pacific hake and cod from Norway, so anything that takes some pressure off the supply chains, said Andrew Cook of the National Association of Fish Fryers to the Financial Times. Environmental groups condemned the move, though. The dogfish remains an endangered species, as Charlotte Coombs of the Marine Conservation Society told the newspaper. The lifting of the fishing ban carries the risk that the dogfish population will shrink significantly again if they are not careful enough. So the whole thing, despite the dogfish, means fewer tourists for Britain. At the same time, other people are coming. Because while Brexit has exacerbated staff shortages and service occupations, the number of expatriate workers in other sectors in the UK has increased. In recent years, for example, significantly more workers have come to Great Britain in the financial sector or in the health sector, according to official government figures, which were obtained by the commercial law firm Evershed Sutherland via a Freedom of Information query and were available to the German press agency. In higher skill, higher wage jobs, employers can in principle get visas for foreign applicants relatively easily, and there's further flexibility for anyone wanting to work in healthcare or care. That was said by Jonathan Ports, a labour migration expert at King's College London. Before Brexit, workers from the EU were free to move around, whereas the hurdles for workers from non-EU countries were relatively high. This has led to an increase in labor migration in fields such as IT or business services. In addition, more workers would come from non-EU countries, especially from India and Nigeria. For example, in the autumn quarter of last year, more than 6,400 workers from India entered the British health and care sector. There were also more than 3,000 each from Zimbabwe and Nigeria in the same period. In the years 2019 and 2020, that means before the post-Brexit rules came into force, these respective figures were never above 2,000 in any quarter, but there's a sharply increasing number of workers from the Philippines. Since the end of 2021, the curve has been steadily upwards. The so-called skilled workers visas for highly qualified workers from abroad must be sponsored by employers. They are awarded above a certain salary threshold. The British-German economist Andrew Lee, who teaches at the Baden-Württemberg Cooperative State University, said, "You can actually say that this system is a Brexit advantage. Whether he paid the price for it, or if you want to pay the price for it, the lost freedom of movement within the EU for British citizens, if that's worth it is another question." The evaluation by Evershed Sutherland also shows which sectors will continue to bring workers from, for example, here in Germany to the country after Brexit. And this is most shown in the education sector, followed by scientific and technical professions and the financial and insurance sectors. First, the Financial Times reported on those numbers. But there are often still strikes among the required workers who are already there. The UK Health Service is worried about patient care ahead of a 4-day strike by the workers, and heads of hospitals and doctors are more concerned than with any other strike, as Leila McKay, director of an umbrella organization for the National Health Services, told the BBC on Saturday. Up to 250,000 appointments and operations could therefore be cancelled and postponed. The strike, which is due to begin today when I'm filming this, is also expected to impact patient safety, McKay said. This is a major concern for all healthcare leaders. After an unprecedented wave of strikes in the British Health Service NHS, the government recently reached an agreement in the wage dispute with the unions, and that for most occupational groups. The residents, however, announced further strikes. They are demanding a 35% pay rise to compensate for 15 years of pay growth being below inflation. The British Medical Association union announced that it would not spare any areas of the health service, including those where patient safety is at risk. However, there is an emergency plan that provides that striking residents can be called to the hospital if the lives of patients are in immediate danger. The union called UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay to meet over the Easter holiday to resolve the dispute. "All we want is a serious offer so that we can talk about this drop in real wages and start negotiations," as a union representative said, according to the BBC. The Conservative government, on the other hand, is asking the union to call off the strike. Only then are negotiations possible. Well, they said the same about the strikes where they finally made a different offer to the NHS personnel, and so we know what that means. But I put a whole package together with worker-related topics today and people coming to Britain-related topics today. And the tourist part is indeed a very interesting one. What you have to know about this is that, well, they said half of the Germans, I would probably even say it's less than half that have a passport. I guess mine even expired recently and I have to renew it, because most people in Germany don't need a passport. They just don't leave the EU. They go on holidays in the EU, and if you don't go on holidays somewhere in any third country where a passport is required, you don't have a passport in Germany, because we have our ID cards and they are valid for everything. There is nothing inside the country where you need a passport for. So everybody has an ID card. because that is required. If you have a passport, you don't need the ID card, but you have to have one of those, and the ID card is just much cheaper than the passport. That's another point of this. And so if you're not planning to go somewhere outside the European Union for your holidays, you don't get a passport. And I didn't have a passport all my life. I always had a passport when I needed it. And I hope I will need it again, so I will renew mine, but I haven't needed it in a couple of years yet, especially because of Corona, and so I didn't even have to look if it has expired or not. Because for everything else, you have your ID card. And so people will not get a very expensive passport to travel to Britain if they are looking in a travel agency, for example, for some holiday. Then they will just go to, I don't know, Sweden or to Ireland, which is close. They speak English there as well, and not go to Britain, because there they have to have their expensive passport on top of everything else, and all the fuss with it. When they travel to Ireland, for example, they land on an airport, go through the EU member state people lane, and that's it. And that they do with their ID card, even if Ireland is not a member of Schengen. And so it is just much easier. And that's why it was absolutely to be expected that, at least from the German side, the number of travelers to Britain, just for tourism reasons, will definitely drop. But today is Wednesday, and the longer time viewers will know what this means, because today is book review day again on my other channel. Might be a very shiny today. This time it's Canadian thriller from Martin Michaud. It's Never Forget is the English title. This is the German version I have in my hand. And it's a very interesting thriller. So have a look on my book review channel if you're interested in books that are not always so mainstream or so well known everywhere. I didn't know Martin Michaud until I stumbled upon this book, and have a look. I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.